I'm Corbett Wall with DV Auction, here with your feeder flash for Thursday, August the 29th. We've been looking for something, and we've got something. On Wednesday, Secretary of Agriculture, Sonny Perdue, announced that he is directing the packers and stockyards of USDA to do an investigation on price manipulation, collusion, restriction of competition, unfair trade practices, all the like that ensued after the fire at Tyson Fresh Meats in Holcomb, Kansas. Finally, thank goodness, it was something we've been wanting to see. This is what we've been asking for. So there's no need to be devil's advocate, say, well, nothing's going to happen now. No, it's time to join in, be positive about it. Makes you feel good to be an American, that somebody's out looking for you. All of us that keep up with the trade and are watching things, we know that collusion took place there. Now it's whether or not PNS can find it. I showed you a graph there on our last visit. It's absolutely blatant what's out there. And you know, how do you crank box beef cutout values $25, you know, in just a little over a week, if you're not colluding together and cranking those prices up. A box beef cutout value, that's not one price that they set. It's a combination of a lot of different cuts and products in there, and the box beef cutout value is the combining of those and comes up with that price. So they have their packers put out a price sheet, and whenever they're selling that to beef purchasers, they show them that price sheet, and then the guys come through there just like you would a lot of places in a retail outlet, and you say, well, I'll take 2 of these, I'll take 1 of these, 12 of those, whatever. But they did not negotiate on those prices. The packers set those prices. So how would any one of them, without being able to visit and collude with the other 4, how would they know to crank those prices up that much? You know, that it's obvious. It's absolutely blatant that that's happened. What's interesting about this press release that we saw come out from USDA, that the Secretary of Agriculture has decided to do the investigation, is nobody's claiming credit for it. It's like a car bomb next to a cafe in Baghdad somewhere. Somebody's got to claim credit for it. I guarantee you Secretary Perdue didn't just wake up Wednesday morning and decide, well, let's have an investigation. No, there was things in motion that went through there, but NCBA didn't take credit for it. RCAF did not take credit for it. U.S. Cattlemen's did not take credit for it, although all of them supported it, and that's great. That's positive. We're all pushing in the same direction. So that's something that we've kind of been looking for. The means that it actually happened, I tell you what, was I know more about that than what I can say. It definitely wasn't any one person out there talking. I guarantee you it wasn't a blowhard YouTuber or opinionated asshole that was pushing it. No, it wasn't any of that. I tell you what, it was absolutely grassroots. And it went from your local county cattlemen's associations, whether it's a standalone county association, a bi, a tri, a quad county association, whatever it is. It was concerned producers getting together and calling in to those local associations, and then ultimately going to your state cattlemen's associations. That's what made it happen. Support your local county cattlemen's associations and your state associations. And that's what made it happen. Not so much the states that have all the feedlots and the packing houses in them. No, the ones the other ones, the ones that give you an idea, not the ones that just have big metroplexes in them and giant urban communities. No, it's your rural states that have a lot of producers in them, not too many feedlots and no packing houses. So hint, hint. There's the ones that made this happen. They got together. That they you know, I hate to say went rogue, but nothing was happening. They had their local producers within that state. They had their local county cattlemen's associations calling out saying, we got to do something, we got to get together, we got to do something. And that's the way it happened. That's the best way for it to happen, and we got to support it. And let's don't come out here all of a sudden and saying, oh, well, nothing's going to happen, PNS, you know. I realize PNS has really never done anything to help anybody. But here's an opportunity to do it. And I've heard enough people talk. Don't discount this. It's not just on the cattle side. It's on your beef side too. And the retailers, your wholesale buyers, all of your meat, beef purchasers, they're madder than the cattle people are. They're super pissed about what happened with them, the colluding, the price gouging that happened on their end. This is going to give them an opportunity to come in and have their voice heard. That'll be the best place to find the price fixing and the colluding will be on this end. We can't ever prove it. It happens every week in the cattle industry. We can't prove it there. But on the meat side, that's where you can do it. And you know, and surely those PNS agents will be able to find the giant pink elephant sitting right in the middle of the room. Surely they'll be able to find it. Talk a little bit more about this, but let's talk about some other things going on. Occasionally, I ask you guys to give prayers for somebody that's in the industry that's kind of a main cog in this big wheel that goes around. I'm going to do that again. Curtis Ward, if you guys know him. Curtis Ward with National Livestock in Oklahoma City. Brilliant man. Works a lot with the commodities, the risk management, hedging and all that there. A friend of mine, really a good guy there, and has sudden health urgency, and he needs your prayers right now. And he's at a spot where you can really use them. So you guys kind of help me out on that. But Curtis Ward, good guy there with National Livestock in Oklahoma City. Needs all the help he can get. So you guys lift him up. Any of you atheists out there, spare me the comments. Don't want to hear it. If you don't have any faith, then that's your struggle, not mine. And don't advertise your ignorance by putting statements on these reports here saying how, you know, how foolish it is to ask for prayers. But that's very frustrating, and I really rather not see that. And if you feel that way, I'd just assume you didn't watch the report. But let's talk about the board on Wednesday. August live cattle futures up 32 cents at 105.07. October was down 57. That's the way it was. Your spot markets on your cattle were higher. All your out fronts were lower. October down 57 cents at 99.20. Will this announcement that we're going to have an investigation help your board on Thursday here? I don't know. I wouldn't necessarily bet on that. It might have moods a little bit more positive though, and make everybody feel a little bit better about what's going on, and that could help your board a little bit. August feeder cattle up 20 cents at 138.75, just trying to land on the right spot to come flush with that CME cash feeder cattle index. September down 92 cents at 132.85. Your other commodities, your grains were not very active. Your out front hogs going into spring, they were up big, well over $1. So maybe that's some signs of they think once we get this Japanese trade deal that Trump did there at that G7 summit, once we get that into place, it's going to help that out a little bit. And we've had some pretty good trade deals here of late. You know, the Japanese deal, once they get that signed and it gets in action, that's going to be great. The European Union deal, although not as big, it's going to be a good deal. We're talking with China. That's better than just having a standoff deal like we normally do with every other president. We're engaging, we're talking to them. Something eventually will happen, but you've got to rattle their cage a little bit and get them to come out and play. Your fat cattle trade, we had a little bit more trade, but we haven't had the bulk of the trade yet. But your packers have been needing cattle all along, but they're buying them a little bit cheaper. Iowa, 2,200 head from 107 to 108 live and 172 to 175 dressed. Nebraska, about the same amount, 2,100, 106 live and 172 to 175 on a dress basis. I'd sell them dressed if they were mine. Your dressed, it'll come back live at least a buck or two higher than what your live prices are out there, and your guys would rather sell dressed usually for the most part, but sometimes they can't get a dress bid. Kansas started to sell some cattle too on Wednesday. $3 lower at 103, few up to 104, but that's not great. We thought there was just bids out there in the Southern Plains. We didn't know they'd started to sell cattle till your summary reports come out through mandatory price reporting, showed some prices in there, but those markets are $2 to $3 lower. In the Northern Plains are mostly $2, spots $3 lower, and the Southern Plains are $2 to mostly $3 lower. But why did we give up that remains to be seen. Box beef cutout values, I've talked earlier in the week about your meat purchasers, your beef guys, just resisting those prices and having lighter volume. They're buying post Labor Day now, so that's not a big deal. But your choice cuts down $3.80. I mean, they had to come back to reality. $230, $296. Selects are actually up $1.10 at $211.81. Now that choice select spread is starting to come together, just over $21 now, and still kind of a light volume, but moving up towards kind of a typical kind of a volume. Your slaughter so far this week through Wednesday, 349,000, actually 2,000 more than that giant slaughter that we had a week ago, but 9,000 less than the same week a year ago. And just like we have the last 2 weeks, we'll catch up on Saturday, and that's when you really see what's going on, is when we get to Saturday. That's when they can make up the ground from that Tyson plant being shut down. And yes, still not slaughtering there, but we did hear word that this week that they are back to fabricating some meat in there, so they're bound to be getting closer to getting that plant back up and running. But let's talk about some of the things that come in after this investigation now. Like I said, I think we need to support that investigation, not just pass it off. Talk to some guys saying this is going to be taken seriously. And we've talked about the PNS not being too interested in helping out on this. Talked to guys that called into the PNS offices saying, why aren't you guys doing something about this? And the agents there, of course, they didn't want to do a whole lot, just said, well, it just looks like supply and demand. No, it's different when the Secretary of Agriculture tells them to go in there and look for something. Suddenly, their attitude changes, and they're going to start looking for some stuff. And as blatant as it is, if ever you could find collusion or any of these unfair trade practices, it's going to be this time. And like we said here since the last 2.5 weeks ago, maybe these packers got a little bit too cute this time. And I think if we're positive, we support that. We don't knock USDA all the time, and of course I've been guilty of that maybe once or twice myself. But no, we need to be positive about this and hope. Now, whenever it does come out that there was no collusion, whenever the investigation is done, if it should come out that there's no collusion, well, then that goes to show you that there's no way to ever prove it. But the heck of it is, there's no rule against collusion on the cattle end, guys. They'll never find it. So I don't know why we can't get together on that end. And I'll go back to something that I suggested several months ago, 6-8 months ago, I guess now. But for your cattle negotiated guys to come out and cry uncle. You remember uncle? It was a United Negotiated Cattlemen's Leverage Effort. Let's get something going. You've got to get together. A lot of your producers got together, and is the reason that we have this investigation. They got together and started complaining, started making calls, started making a big push to get something done, and now we have something. Let's get something going on a negotiated side. You know, you say, what can we do? What can we do? The thing you do to help these fat cattle prices is you got to ask more for the cattle. You got to ask a higher price. You know, in a way, how can you blame these packers? When's the last time any of you guys went out and bought something and didn't try to buy it as cheap as you can? It's just good business practices. And then if you've got something and you're trying to sell it, what do? You try to get as much for it as you can. Well, that's what your packers are doing. They're not really coming out saying, oh, we didn't do that. No, that's what you do. Buy low, sell high. They've got a monopoly on the deal, and that's why they can do it. But if you get together, then you can start doing that. And if these negotiated sellers, for the last several weeks here, your packers have been coming out in early in the week wanting to buy cattle because they're short bought, especially in the northern plains. I know we've got a lot of cattle coming market ready in the southern plains, but in the northern plains, they're very current. We could easily go well into September and not sell any cattle, and guys wouldn't be in too big of a bind. Now, it wouldn't be great trying to catch up from that, but the few negotiated sellers, it's not that big of a deal to ask. They could cry uncle, they could get together. What do we got? 3 or 4 guys in Texas maybe that sell negotiated cash. Maybe 8, 10, or 12 in Kansas sell negotiated cash. I realize when we get up into the northern plains, Midwest, you've got a lot of farmer feeders, but they don't have cattle ready every week. So it wouldn't take all of them. But how hard would it be to those guys to get together, make a conference call on a Monday, and get to talking about what they're hearing around, where they think everybody's at, how many cattle they got to sell, if anybody's in a bind, or whether they can hold cattle if they don't get anything done that week. But ask more for the cattle. That's the only way you're ever going to get more, is ask more. And not maybe a buck or two. Everybody just kind of seems to know what they're going to do. You know, they advertise the bids and the asking prices. You know, they bid a buck or two back and they ask a buck or two more, and then it comes back in there. No, ask $10 more for the cattle. I just told you on the last visit that your packers are making $500 a head here. What would it hurt to ask them 10, 12, 15 bucks, 100 more for the cattle than you did last week? You know that they need the cattle. Your formula guys would love it. They're rooting from the sidelines like always. Your biggest players are rooting from the sidelines for your little guys. Ask more for the cattle. If they laugh it off, tell them, okay, talk to you next week. Don't sell them any. I know you guys are mavericks, a few of you that still sell negotiated, but you got to band together, or this whole industry, it starts right there at the fat cattle market and trickles all the way down to the calves. And I tell you what, we got to get together somehow. What else can we do? You know, join a marketing cooperative, Consolidated Beef Producers, headquartered right here in Canyon, Texas. You know, they will take your show list, they will take your cattle you got for sale, they'll pool them with other producers, other feedlots, and try to get leverage and get as much as they can for cattle. Producers of Omaha will do the same thing, especially you guys up in the Midwest and in the northern plains. For them, based out up there, they buy feeder cattle, they will pool your fat cattle and try to sell them for you. They will do that. What else can you do? Take them to the auction. We've talked about that. You know, get some competition in there somewhere. Don't just lay down for them every week. And it's our fault. It's the cattle people's fault for not trying to get more for the cattle. You know, get behind the online fat cattle auction. They sold a few fats on there on Wednesday, 106, and not a lot of them. Why didn't they sell a lot of them? Because not enough people are consigning their cattle to it. How bad would that be to put your cattle on that online exchange and hope you get them sold? If enough people would get on there and try to sell their cattle on there, the packers would have to support it at some point. But you've got to get together. I mean, we can just keep beating our heads against the wall, and I know what you guys are thinking that are listening to this right now. They're thinking, well, you guys get together. You know, I'm gonna basis jump when I get a chance. Okay, how'd that basis jumping going for you so far this week? You know, we had guys jumping at 103, and your spot August board is 105. Whoops. That didn't work as good. Now I realize you guys are probably on the October, but still that's nothing. So, you know, it's not working so great right now, right? Got to band together, ask more for the cattle, make them give it. Let's talk about your feeder cattle market, your real-time index on Cattle Market Central late in the day on Wednesday at 138.39. Down $1.43, not so much from prices not being that good. It was basically steady or a little better everywhere, but losing some of those high Wednesday sales from a week ago, like Bassett, Nebraska, when those drop off the other end on that moving average, that makes you lose ground on your index levels too. But OKC West, El Reno, Oklahoma, 7,600 head there. The market reporters called them feeder steers steady to $2 higher or lower. Excuse me, they called feeder steers steady to $2 lower. Feeder heifers 2 to 3 higher. Look at this Cattle Market Central automated market report. It looks like everything should have been $1 to $2 higher. I don't know, but maybe I'm just looking at the prices. I don't know. You know, they might be looking at something else. But when you got a lot of volume in those different weight groups, you can use those weighted average prices to call a trend. Let's look at some of your best tested weights on your steers. 1,459 head of 7-weight steers, average 748, 137.27. That was about 65 cents higher for your weighted average price. 1,874 head of 8-weight steers, averaged 842 at 133.53. That was $1.65 higher on the weighted average price. On the heifers, the best tested weights, 1,017 head of 6-weight heifers, average 654 at 133.76. That was $1.39 higher than the weighted average from last week. And 958 head of 7-weight heifers, average 752 at 126.41. That was a quarter lower. But that look is a good look at El Reno. Looked like a pretty good market there. Dodge City, light run again, only 1,800 head there at Winter Livestock in Dodge City. They did say it had a higher undertone. Look at the market. This is the only place you'll see this market report advertised unless you're local there. But Stockman's Livestock Market, Yankton, South Dakota, 4,500 feeders plus. You look at they had good tests in all your weight groups. Lighter calves were tested well. Your middleweight feeder cattle, getting up into your heavier yearling type cattle. A lot of them probably background, some of them off grass. But good tests in a lot of your weight groups. It looked like on your lightweight steer calves under 5, they were trading in the 170s. Some 5-weight steers there near 160. 451 head of 6-weight steers, average 647 at 155.18. 557 head of 7-weight steers, average 755 at 148.72. 255 head of 8-weight steers, average 853 at 139.33. And 428 steers in the 9-weight category, Yankton, South Dakota, they averaged 939, 134.71. Didn't have a sale last week, so kind of hard to compare there. But your stick-out sale at Yankton that I saw was 87 head of black and red calves, weighed 703 at 154.50. Stockman's Livestock. But the biggest 8-weight quote that I saw was out of Creston, Iowa. Creston Livestock, 57 head of 810-pound steers, bring a $1.47. That's your feeder flash.